early on, right? You have to find your mentors. You have to find the people that will help you know what you don't know. I feel very grateful for people who have taken me under their wing early on to be able to get to the stage that we're at.
This is the PMP Industry Insider Podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome out to another episode of the PMP Industry Insider Podcast, where we take a look at what is changing in the pest and lawn industries, and we take you to the front lines to those that are driving those changes. I'm Donnie Shelton, owner of Triangle Home Services, which has Triangle Pests and Triangle Lawn. And with me is Florida's #1 resident, and I am not talking about who everyone thinks. It's actually Mr. Dan Gordon, not the typical Florida #1 resident. So with that,
not a golfer or a politician. So
not a golfer. Well, maybe you are a golfer.
Yeah,
Politician.
well, I don't know. Loosely defined, I'm a golfer.
Yes.
So hello, everybody. Dan Gordon, PCO Bookkeepers and M&A Specialists, and great to be with you. Couple of housekeeping items. Please consider using our sponsors if you're interested in marketing, Comarch, comarch.com. And if you're interested in pest control specific insurance, it's PestSure. That's pestsure.com for auto, general liability, workers' comp, and a whole host of other things. And if you're interested in joining a industry peer group, which we've had quite a bit of success on, take a listen to episode 136 or visit pmpindustryinsider.com/peer groups. And did I forget anything before I introduce?
You know what, Dan, you're firing on all cylinders. You even remembered that it's a / you did not call it a / I'm so proud of you. Ladies and gentlemen, please take note of this moment. Dan has successfly nailed his graduated of the intro. So I've got to change it is what we're got to say here. So moving on, Dan, go ahead.
All right. And then, so today we are going to talk about from going from scratch to over $100 million in revenue. We were going to say 9 digits, but I wasn't smart enough to know what that meant. So we are going to talk about going over 100 million. And since neither of us have done that, we decided to have a guest who I've worked with pretty extensively at the beginning of his journey. And that is Matt Mehr. And he's the co-founder of Hawx Pest Control with his partner, Scott Wilson. They started in December of 2013, shortly after setting up shop in a small location outside Ogden, Utah, and where I met them. They partnered with JK Gleave, who brought invaluable experience to the team. And together, the three have built Hawx into a service pest management that has achieved tremendous organic growth and national expansion by pairing the power of door-to-door sales with customer-centric operational team led by top industry talent. How is that? And now let me just give you a couple of data points. So after successfully scaling from 1 to 5 locations first 3 years, Hawx had tripled its footprint by 2020 by expanding into California, Texas, and across the South. Company now has more than 20 locations. In 2018, this is pretty impressive. This kind of reminds me of Triangle. They surpassed 250,000 services. All right, well, maybe not Triangle.
I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah,
their first major milestone was 1 million individual services arrived in April 2000. Where are you getting all of these stats, Matt? Holy smokes! I can't even. By the numbers, Hawx would fall into the top 15 of PCT companies, and we had a discussion. Matt likes the allure of not giving PCT the information, but so they're not on the list. And by the way, this is not a dig at PCT because I love those guys, but we have a whole bunch of clients who probably should be on that list who do not report. Let's see. 2021 was a big year. They were acquired by Mike Paulus of PCM Growth. Let's see. Let's just get into. Welcome, Matt.
Sounds good, Dan. Thank you. You filter through the information.
Yeah, I'm just kind
of.
I figure we can ask you questions and you can tell us. But
absolutely
from the beginning, Matt and I, it was a terrific run, and so good guy, and so we thought we'd have him on the podcast. So anyway, go ahead.
It's an honor to be here. I appreciate what you guys are doing for the industry. Throughout my course of my career, I've just always loved learning. And I think you guys are providing that information out to the industry about best practices. And I hope I can contribute in some way today by telling our story, right? And what was successful for us. But again, my hat's off to you guys and what you guys are doing for the industry. It can't be understated, the effect that both of you are having. So thank you.
Both of us or one of us? Or
thank you very much there, Matt. And we will assume that's all for Dan. And I will echo some of Dan's sentiment. I'm not going to go and try to read, but I will say he was correct that you've done something that neither of us has done, which if our listeners are listening, this means that he is way smarter than Dan and I. So we're very excited about this time that we get to spend. Let's just jump right in it. So let's start with, first of all, how did you get started? We went through some of your data points there. You started in 2013. You guys are obviously a much larger company now. And we thought we'd spend this episode kind of talking about that journey, and what people can learn from your journey and kind of what the vision was when you started. How did that change kind of along the way? And what were some big picture things that you feel like were pivotal in helping you guys get to this kind of level? Because obviously, listen, we're in the top 0.0000001% in the industry of people who are able to do this. Even with the advent of door-to-door, the milestones that you guys have hit have been nothing short of pretty amazing. So I think it's a great story. I think our listeners will be able to learn a lot kind of from your story, but let's pull it back to scratch. Let's start there.
Love it. Thank you. So, when we go through it, Hawx is a full service, hyper growth, technologically driven pest control company. We didn't start there. And so as the vision has gone and morphed over the years, it's kind of come to this point where we've taken the opportunities that have presented themselves over the years. And so my background, I actually don't come from the pest control industry. I didn't know anybody in the pest control industry. I was just past the bar in Utah. So I was a practicing attorney for just a few months. And my brother-in-law, who is my co-founding
Hang off. For our listeners, we will not hold that against him. He obviously made a good choice.
Yeah, he's an attorney and just about everyone.
Yeah, because I got a whole litany of attorney jokes, but I'm gonna put him at pause now. So continue on.
Insert those attorney jokes here, and you can flip me off behind my back, and I'm okay with it, right? Like absolutely. And so, we saw an opportunity, Scott and I, to really. We were at the point of our life that it was now or never, right? We wanted to make an impact on our lives, on, others' lives. And we saw the pest control industry as we were getting exposed to it. Scott was getting recruited to come work in the industry, and we started doing some due diligence. Remember, I love to learn. I love the process of learning. I think, knowledge is a really powerful. And so I'm gathering all these data points, and I'm discovering that this is in 2013. Okay. So over 10 years ago, and we're just diving in. As we realize it, we realize it's an industry full of fantastic individuals, a lot of blue collar family generational businesses. And that related to me. My father's a blue collar construction worker. I grew up picking up diapers around, rental properties and just hustling along the way. And I related that to my father. And so I just have a really fond experience of what it takes and the grit and the grind from America's Best, right? I mean, and so we got together, we partnered up, and boy, did we not fully understand what we were getting into, right? I was creating a spreadsheet. Dan likes to say you can make a spreadsheet take, all numbers, all keystrokes, right? I can make that spreadsheet say what I want it to. And, my first pro forma was really generous on our costs, our attrition. I don't know how, did I bake in any attrition into the model? And we had a very naive approach when we first started out, and we were just drinking from a water hose, right? A fire hydrant, right? We were just drowning in there. And it was interesting as you paired both what my skill set is and what Scott's skill set is, and how does that come together to create a really fantastic partnership. So it would be disingenuous of me not to recognize my partners right here on this podcast and to say what it is when, he's very enthusiastic and optimistic, right? And I'm a little bit more pragmatic and coming together. And so when I'm having a bad moment, how does he pick me up? And I think that relates to a lot of people listening. As you go through the struggles of starting out your own company, there are highs and lows, right? And there are these moments where you have euphoria and you're like, this is going to work. It's absolutely going to happen. And then it's followed quickly by a sucker punch, right?
Right.
You're just getting nailed from one side. You're getting nailed from the other side. And you're like, I had a blind spot over here. I didn't understand fully that metric. Oh, what was that KPI that you just mentioned? Let me take that learnings back. Let me and involve that into my business so that I could really, really take it. So Scott, would focus in on the sales and marketing component. And I was basically keeping the wheels on the cart for most of those years, right? At the beginning, right? And so, if you split our kind of journey up into 3 segments, early on, it was all just hustle, just grind, right? I was jumping in a truck. I ran a route. Scott was out there selling and drumming up business, right? We were family funded, right? So it was just all of our money we were putting into it. I remember I asked my father to help us invest some startup capital, some seed capital in the business. And I was like, Dad, we're going to start a pest control company. Will you help us? And he was like, son, are you sure? You're an attorney. Like, do you want to do that? And I was like,
I had one of those epiphanies too. I was a CPA.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And it's like, Dad, you have no idea what the pest control industry is about. You have no idea what's happening. And he, by the way, loves it, right? Glad I jumped off that cliff, right, to be able to do it. And basically it's almost career suicide to take that jump. But to be more concrete, right, at those early stages, the business relies so much on the founders, right? It relies so much on the energy that they're providing, on them staying together, cohesive on the vision, right? How do you set correct expectations on the customer acquisition side, and then how do you fulfill those customer expectations, right? And so the customer service full around. And so there are times, gentlemen, where I wish I could black out some of those experiences early on, right? But now you look back and those are the days we reminisce about, honestly, because those were the good old days, right? Those were the grind, right? That was the grind.
Oh, if it's too easy, then you didn't earn it, So, yeah. I do remember being in a restaurant with you and Scott. And, I thought I understood door to door. I understood the mechanics of it, but Scott had this, it was like a March Madness contest that like motivated all of the whole team had brackets, and the brackets were all about selling. And I just thought it was ingenious. That was pretty neat stuff. So tell us about some of those kinds of things that you guys implemented.
This is really in the second stage, right, of the business. We had to recapitalize the company. And so we got into a family office type scenario, right? And you need capital to grow. One of our sayings is, you have to spend money to make money. All right. And especially on the customer acquisition side. And what faults, Dan, ultimately with a lot of door-to-door companies is they're underfunded on the operational side. They spend so much of their capital on these tournaments that you're talking about, on these incentives, on everything for the door-to-door side of the business. And they forget really the foundation of the company, and the service that they provide is ultimately on the operations, right? And so some of those incentives that we do it's friendly competition, right? You covered in one of your episodes previously about the psyche of a door-to-door sales representative, right? They're very outcome-driven people, and they're very competitive, hyper-competitive. I don't think it's just door-to-door people. I think it's salespeople in general, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think for those listening, they need to understand that, door to door is a customer acquisition channel. And they're just salespeople. Most of them are younger salespeople, right, during college, but they still have a lot of the psyche that salespeople naturally have. And so we run heavy competitions, right? We run them early on. We just did those March Madness tournaments, and whoever sold the most and highest revenue, right, won those tournaments. We realized that we needed to come back and hold some other KPIs that may sound simple to people, but they're really outcome determinative on how that customer stays active. And so we would spend a lot of money up front. And then in the back end, when we would measure retention, we found out that during those competition times, sometimes the accounts added on weren't the best quality of accounts, right?
Imagine that.
So they're just putting numbers on the board, right?
Imagine that.
They're just putting numbers on the board. And again, I don't think it's door to door. I think it's just salespeople, right? It's just the psyche. I have a friend in the industry. She says this in her organization, and it was a commercial organization. She said, look, the operational people would always complain, hey, the sales guys go out there and sell the dream, and I have to service the nightmare. And I love it, right? I absolutely love the saying. Because especially in commercial, you're oh yeah, we can take care of that. Absolutely, we can clean under your kitchens, right? We're going to take care of all your rodent problems. Oh, your flies are going to go away in a jiffy, and so the salespeople set really high expectations, and then the service people have to come in there and service the nightmare, right? In door to door, it's a little bit more simple. The pest problems, right? We're ants, spiders, rodents, and just residential pest control in general. And so it's interesting as we move along, some of those KPIs that are critical for it, right? We're talking about auto pay. We found a massive difference between when we were charging the card up front on that customer sale instead of charging after the service, and how sticky the lifetime value of that customer was after we processed the cards at the beginning. And so we quickly
meaning just to clarify there that if you charge them up front, you got a stickier customer than if you waited till after you serviced. Is that correct?
Absolutely. That's
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so as we went through that process, another key metric, one thing we talk a lot about, and sorry for bouncing around a little bit, but it's for door to door, it's the right customer for the right price with the right expectations. And if you have those three component, I can prove out cohorts after cohorts on a retention that rivals the best retention in the industry. And so if you get the right customer, so we're talking about customer demographics, right? Are they in a higher income area? Do they have the potential to stay active long-term? We're not selling double wides. We've absolutely sold double wides in the past, right? That customer cannot afford the service, at least a premier service, a premium service long-term. And so then you go the right price. If you charge too high or too low for these customers, there's a whole pricing analysis that needs to be done by those demographics and what demographic area you're selling in, and then with the right expectations. And so when you come across training, are these newer salespeople, some of them are rookies, second years, do they understand all the pest control, nuances? It's impossible to pour into them all the industry knowledge that all of us have. But as you focus in on the proper training for those key elements, it really, really provides that frontline salesperson with all the information that they truly need to be successful. Right. And then
so Matt, where are you getting like the demographic data? Like you reached all these conclusions, but like, it was a journey, but where did you hire outside consultants? What did you
Yeah, so this is really in stage 2, running into stage 3 of the business, where we had the capital to really create BI tools that would funnel through the data and have so we could basically separate our customer base into cohorts and run a data science analysis onto it. And so we were trying to do this in Excel, and it would break. Excel would crash. And, it would take us 5 to 10 days on our data team to really get through this, because the computer would take so long to process. I want the listeners to know that they can do this without without investing millions of dollars into data science. We have a really robust BI tool, because data is the foundation for how we make decisions. But it's interesting. You mentioned Jonathan Gleave, JK Gleave. We brought him in. He's our third partner here. We brought him in early on. When he was out there selling door to door, you naturally know when you're in a good neighborhood. You do. And we ran the analysis, and 95% of his sales that he made in 2014 and 2015 were in great area, right? That would fit our demographic. And so it's not this, there is a lot of secret sauce that we put into this and on all the metrics to get it honed in. For us, it was important to get this into a process so it could scale. Because how do I take the knowledge that Jonathan Gleave had to go out there and sell in the right neighborhoods to these first year rookies, to these second year rookies, and to really these second year sales reps, and get them to do it the way that Jonathan Gleave would do it? And so there was a scalability process, but and most of our listeners know their demographics really well. They understand, we have blackout areas, right? That MSA, we're not going to sell in. We're absolutely, if the phone rings in there, I am not going to, dispatch a truck. And so in stage 2 of the business, we were relying on that naturally. And then stage 3, we really moved into this data science process where we developed that foundational layer. And then we were exporting that onto, frontline sales applications. So the sales reps had all the knowledge at their fingertips to be able to make the right decisions. Okay. So all of that, Dan, really leads us out to a good outcome for the business, right? What are the great outcomes? What are the KPIs that the business needs to really flourish, right? Well, we're all capitalists here. We're in business to make money, right? And EBITDA is a standard of measure of how successful your company is, right? Gross margin is another. You pair that with the retention rates, and I can show you very clearly by cohort their retention rate in the process. And so when you
say cohort, explain that, and then tell me about the data points that you're looking for: income, age of home. What are some of those data points?
You named a couple, right? We don't want to sell to renters. If everybody who actually said they moved as a cancellation reason actually moved, it would be like everybody's all over the place.
The U.S. real estate market would be on fire. Oh.
and so it's filtering through some of those things, but that's exactly right. And across 20 areas, it may change in Greensboro, North Carolina versus it does in Southern California, right? In Los Angeles, right? Chicago versus Austin, Texas. There are a variety of different factors that come in each area that will change the analysis for us. And since we've been selling in these areas long enough, we have these cohorts. So yes, income is one of those items, right? Home value. What's the cost of living to there? And so you have to normalize for it. One of my concerns is that in the economic crisis we're in right now, how much disposable income really is there out there at certain income levels? And if you're not in an area of the country where pest control is a utility, then are you going to allocate some of your budget if you're on the lower side of the income spectrum? And so if we're going to spend all this money to go out and dispatch teams, right? Dispatch the mercenaries, so to speak, to go out there and knock on doors and pay a high customer acquisition cost, I want to know what we're going to get from it. And so these cohorts, these segments of customers can actually last a really long time. So you talk about 85% retention, right? Go ahead, Donnie. You have a question.
Well, okay. I want to make sure So we're talking about scratch to over 100 million. And I want to kind of get back to, it was you and your partner. You guys eventually, you grew the business door to door. You grew the business through service. You recapitalized it. Like what was after that? Like why the decision to recapitalize? It was like, hey, we're going fast and this is working and we want to go faster. Like what necessitated kind of all that? Like, you know what I mean? Like what was the next level? I guess is my point.
Yeah, as we were going through it, we needed the capital to be able to provide, to be able to pay some of those back end checks to continue the growth trajectory. The recurring business, because we were growing so fast, the recurring business didn't have enough capital to fund the growth. Right.
Right.
You have a great saying about this too. You could go bankrupt getting rich. Right. Go broke getting rich. You could spend all your money on customer acquisition.
Right.
And
I'm assuming you guys are like, it's going to take you a year, well, even more than maybe like the second year is when you actually start making money on that customer.
Yeah, we break even at month 14.
Yeah. And I mean, and it's an important point for our listeners to know is that if you're going to go this route, you're going to have some cash because it's not like a normal digital sale where you might be paying
every door-to-door company that we've been involved with. And Matt, you could, early years when you and I were working together, man, I came out there and it was like, okay, how are we going to make this work? And you guys did.
We were sitting in a conference room, and that's where back to the beginning stages, right? As an entrepreneur, you have these moments of euphoria, and then you get sucker punched, right? This happens. You have a severe accident. You have a fatality. You've got to work through. Like at every stage of the business, there are these risks, and as you get bigger, the small little nuances between KPIs equal massive amounts of percentage points on the P&L, right? And so Donnie, we had to have access to capital to be able to fund the customer acquisition cost. There's a metric we pay a lot of attention to. Okay, it's called the LTV to CAC, and it's a quite simple metric where you come in and you say, what's the lifetime value of the customer divided by how much it cost me to acquire that customer? Mm-hmm. And if that is above a 3, you're doing pretty well, right? And then you just want to pour. Then the question becomes, how do you acquire enough capital to be able to put it onto that customer acquisition, channel, whether it's digital, door to door, technician sales, referral, word of mouth. We're all making these determinations.
All right, so I'm dying to ask this. Lifetime value, like how many? Yeah.
Exactly. I was going to ask if you didn't.
Right? Yeah. There are 3, and you have to. So the lifetime value, are you including gross margin or is it an EBITDA percentage? So there's some definitional purchase.
Well, let's start first with time. Like let's not even put value on it. Let's just talk about months. Like average time someone is on the service. Do you guys know that?
Yeah, absolutely. We know that. And I'm going to give you the convoluted answer, right? Because back to the
I would expect nothing more.
But yeah, I mean, come on, right? That's my training. As you come to it, you say, I can tell you cohorts and show at the right customer at the right price an 85% retention level. Mm-hmm. I can show you cohorts that only last 65% after 1 year. I can show you the ranges between these two. And so the trick in door to door is to be able for us to isolate and go after all of those that will stay at 85%. We're not there yet. Okay. Because how many of those customers are actually out there in one given summer? You have to realize we have $1 million sales days where we're adding on all of this. So our gross margin is quite strong as you would know. And so that lifetime value of that customer is quite long.
So where's the break even, right? So you've got 85, 65. What's the break even point? Where's the point where you say below this?
Our first year customer retention rate, right, is right there at 78%. And when you blend them
22% attrition. After that, you're kind of like, maybe this customer is not worth it.
So I'm confident telling you that number because I know that's a very strong number. All right.
It's a very strong number.
I've gone through, you mentioned really Mike Paulus coming in PCM growth to come in 2021. And what he was really, he's a billionaire, right? He sold his last company for 3.5 billion from the tech space. And he's coming in and wanted to revolutionize another space. And so we put our money where our mouth is. We were really good at door-to-door operators, right? Well, we wanted to diversify our acquisition channel and we went to digital. And so we started investing heavily in digital. And that was a whole new world for me, right? Because we're organic growth specialists, but mainly on the door-to-door side. And so we had to learn how to do it on digital. I will tell you this, that our digital campaign versus our door-to-door campaign, we have it honed in on the door-to-door side that the costs to the digital game and the headaches that we have to deal with on that, it's just better to stay for us on a mass scale on the door-to-door side. Because, you talk about route density, you talk about gross margin, you talk about, dollars per hour. Our dollars per hour during the off season, we're hitting about $165 per hour. During the on season, right? During the season when we're door to door, it falls to about $125 per hour. And so I know there are companies out there who would love to have that kind of route density, that kind of power from a routing perspective. We've done a lot of work to try to get that honed in. So I don't want to dodge.
It's what I love about door to door is the gross margin is so much higher because of the route density.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't want to dodge it. Sorry, I don't want to dodge your question because you asked a very direct question, right? What's the lifetime?
Well, you seem to answer them like a lawyer, so
yeah. And then you take the customer. So then you take the customer acquisition cost, right? Divide that, and what do you fully get, right? And so anything above a 3 is great, and so that's why we're willing to invest in it, and we'll keep investing. Our digital is above a 3. Our digital channel is there. We just get a lot of nuances there where customers are calling us from different segments of the city, and it's really hard to set expectations. How do you do an inspection over the phone, right? We've tried to say, hey, get us on FaceTime. Let's get some of these technological advancements to help us understand what you're going through, because we'll show up as everybody understands, right? And you're like, wow, that customer completely told me something different on the phone. And there is a massive cockroach issue. There's a sanitation issue. You should probably just light the whole home on fire and start over, right? And we've all come across those accounts. And so that you don't get that with door to door. You don't have that, right? What do you have on the flip side? You have maybe some door to door sales agents pushing a little too hard or convincing people about a value of a service that they may not want. And so you have pros and cons to each one of these customer acquisition channels. So pick your pro, pick your con. And for us, we're really good at minimizing the cons to the door-to-door side of it so that we can really fuel that growth. And once the investors truly saw that, and then we had access, then it was just come in, here's some dry powder, so to speak, and let's, light a match and let you go after it and see what you guys can accomplish. And so that's, I feel very grateful for our current private equity setup, right? We've gotten to a great spot, because without that investment, we wouldn't have been able to get to where we're at. But let me pause, take a break, right? And take a breath. Does that help answer those specific questions?
I do. So it sounds like if you take the amount of money that it takes to get that customer, divide it by how much money you get, I flipped it around. How much you make on the customer, divided by how much you spend on the customer, you're looking for a 3x. If you get a 3x, and that's considered,
it's an ROI.
We want to push it. We want to push it to 5. We're just under 4 right now.
Yeah. Gotcha. So in other words, You sell a $500 account, you keep it for 5 years. That's $2,500 at a 50% gross margin. That's $1,250. How much are you willing to pay for that customer? 1/5 of $1,250. Is that?
You got it.
Did I? Without practicing, how was that?
Yeah, hey, you're
Now,
the math expert, right? I'm the
now,
word.
however, what I heard was very interesting because one of the things that we hear about door to door is that it's not as sticky. There's all kinds of issues. And when we go to sell a company, oh, there's a discount applied to a door company. However, what you're saying is that if you pick and choose the doors that you knock, you can really impact the all those negative factors. You can minimize those and make them more effective than digital, because digital you can't choose where those leads are coming from. You just put it out there.
Yes, you can,
which
you
is
can
kind of interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, we follow it down to the sales rep, and when they come back and try to negotiate a better deal with us, right? We understand where their sales practices are. So it's not just the home, it's not just the customer. I don't want to give that impression. There's a whole cycle to this, right? There's how does the technician fulfill the service? How does the salesperson set expectations? And then what is the customer's profile? But right customer, right expectations at the right price, I can show you a very high retention rate. Now, the trick for us, the execution part, is how do you get those customers, and how do you execute?
But the interesting part is that, and I've sold some pretty big door-to-door companies, and I work with a lot of door-to-door companies, and everybody's willing to take that, oh yeah, but we're a door-to-door company, so I'm willing to, look at myself as maybe a less valuable company. You guys are like, screw you. We are, this is the way to do it, right?
It's absolutely, Dan. And I didn't
I
always
like it. I like it.
this is part of the growth. This is part of that learning. I have a billionaire in my back pocket, right? And so when you have that, you're able to spend capital and try new things, right? And go through that whole process. And that has provided the confidence level to say, we don't need an acquisition. We don't need to go through. We don't need anybody else to tell us we're good. We find, Dan, right now, we are in a competition with ourselves. And so I want to express
the fact of the matter is, if I'm out there buying companies 2x, 3x, 4x, well, if I knew what I was doing, I could add those same customers for 1x or less. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so when you're in a competition, when you go through that, you've done the P&L math, right? And that's the acquisition math. And that's where we choose to spend our dollar to get the LTV to CAC ratio that we want from an investment standpoint. It's not the only metric that we stand on. Okay, there are a variety of financial KPIs and operational KPIs that we go forward. But I think what for the companies, you have to find out there. You guys talked a lot about benchmarking, and at each stage of our companies, at each stage of our company, we found benchmarks that fit us at that stage. And then we compared ourselves against that. And now we're in a competition amongst ourselves to really make sure we execute on those high level items that we know. But early on, right, you have to find your mentors. You have to find the people that will help you know what you don't know. And I'm super grateful for the industry, because they helped me realize what I didn't know. It's people like you guys, pouring into everybody out there and say, hey, look at this, look at this, look at this. And so
Go ahead.
I'm very active. I want to be active in MPMA and PPMA. It's a very new initiative for me to be able to give back a little bit and help others, because where much is given, much is required, right? I feel very grateful for people who have taken me under their wing early on to be able to get to the stage that we're at.
So let me ask you, one of the KPIs that we see in door to door, and we kind of uh, really discovered it, and but not in traditional pest control, is the completion ratio on sales. And the reason is because you said you could have $1 million day. How many of those accounts get serviced,
Service.
and how many you just can't get to? What do you
Yeah.
think that your service to sales, and how does that affect the sales rep who says, geez, I sold this account, you couldn't get to it, and I lost it. And now,
Ab-
how does that work?
Absolutely. So we call it the sold to service ratio. And then
Mhm.
we also have a days to start ratio. And so if you don't allocate availability behind the door to door people to start customers within 48 hours, the sold to service ratio falls after that. We see favorable metrics in day 3, but day 3 after that, it falls.
Start to
And
drop.
so and so it's like you have to get there. And that's why people underestimate the expense on the operational side to run a door-to-door program. When we hit our first $1 million day, we had to have excess capacity on the operational side to be able to do it. And we spend a lot of money to do that. And so as you go through the whole process, you're like, is that worth it? And so we find an equilibrium between the sale and the service side of it to be able to hit that sold to service ratio. And I wish I could say, hey, we've got this down to a science. The hard part is when the sales team shows up by area, this is a by branch scenario. So you don't know if they're going to sell $2 million worth of business or 4. You have to let them show up and then take a gamble on it, and then you can set the equilibrium really in May, the end of May, the beginning of June, to say, okay, we've got it dialed in now where we can get that days to start ratio down within 48 hours. And so same day, next day is the terminology we use there to do that. And look, honestly, the sold to service ratio, we also watch it by salesperson. We watch it by technician. And then how does that funnel up so that we know who to help train? Who do we take under our wing to say, hey, technician X, right? You probably need to do a little bit better, show up on time, right? We measure how accurate or how good are we at showing up to the time slot that's allotted at the beginning of the time slot. So if it's an 8 to 10 appointment, we want to show up at
How
8.
how do you set the expectations of the reps, because it's not going to be 100%, right? Let's say it's 95. Could I live with that? 90? I don't know, maybe 85. Because from my
95 would be
perspective,
Yeah,
but,
95, that's a phenomenal number.
yeah, no, that's a tremendous number. But I sold that, so I look at those 5 points or 10 points or 15 points as you guys taking that out of my pocket. How do you manage that with the
Yeah.
reps?
Yeah. So you really look at the fall off and the reasoning. So it's a data collection exercise to say, why are they falling off between that segment? Is it because we showed up late? What's the customer saying canceled when the technician showed up? So we had to create these software integrations up front so that we could measure. So the technician could say, yeah, customer thought it was a one-time service, right? Customer wasn't home. Customer didn't understand that they were in a contract. And so all of those things create this fall off. And so then you can come and to paint a broad stroke across door-to-door sales reps, again, you can't, that's unfair. It's unrealistic. There are some phenomenal door-to-door people out there. There are phenomenal salespeople out there. There are good companies. There are bad companies. And so to paint a broad stroke, it's disingenuous to do that. And so we have to look at it on an individual agent basis to say, this is what your customers are saying as to what the drop off is.
Right.
And
So
sometimes
the way that you're managing it is essentially you're just tying it back to how the sale was set up. And then that's basically just taking it back. Like, it's not just that the technician couldn't get there. There are valid, specific reasons as to why this was falling off after 3 days or whatever. And so it just helps them hone in on their sales. It sounds like that's what you're saying. So they get a
absolutely.
little bit better. Well,
Absolutely.
look, this has been amazing, Matt. I mean, I feel like we could probably sit down and talk about this all
And
day
we
long.
should have you back, and we
Have
can
it back.
do some more,
Exactly,
because it's,
exactly.
I mean, we could go on for quite a while,
But
but
I
that's
just
the
want to thank
problem.
you. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Thanks for sharing your story and kind of what you guys are doing. It sounds really exciting. And of course, a
Very
new
exciting.
chapter for you guys.
Yeah,
And so
very.
it'll be fun to kind of watch where you go and what you do. And believe me, you're definitely in good company when we talk about data. I am a data fan as well. Although it sounds like you guys are way more sophisticated than I am, but that's fantastic. So
But
it's
you're capturing some pretty cool things. So
yeah, for
yeah.
sure, for sure. So with that, if we're gonna close it out here, as always, if you enjoyed the show, we appreciate it if you could just rate and review us on Apple, Spotify, however it is that you listen to us. As a reminder, all the resources and topics that we talked about today will be on the podcast website, pmpindustryinsider.com. Just take a look under show notes. And if you have any complaints, concerns, or just general griping in general, we ask you to direct that with Dan. And with that, we'll sign off. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thank
Matt.
you.
See ya. Bye bye now.